Now, the Russian company couldn't import anymore the base paper on which you lay the emulsion, because there's only one company that does the base paper for photographic paper, which is DuPont in Germany.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden we had no paper.
Oh, no. That was Rafael Hortala Vallve, the founder of AutoFoto, a company that rescues and restores analogue photo booths. He was telling me about some supply chain issues he's been having sourcing paper for his machines, after explaining how purchasing his first analogue photo booth over a decade ago went from being a niche hobby to a passionate dedication to preserving these relics of photography history. And speaking of photography history, this year marks the 100th anniversary of the invention of the fully automatic, coin-operated photo booth, the very first of which appeared in 1925 on Broadway near Times Square in New York City. To celebrate this occasion, Rafael and AutoFoto have organised a series of globally connected events, collaborations and projects, which I was curious to learn more about. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. You are listening to Subtext and Discourse Art World Podcast, highlighting unique perspectives on contemporary art and photography. I'm your host, Michael Dooney. Please don't feel pressured to leave a rating, review or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. However, if you want to do me a small favour, please send this episode to someone you know who would be fascinated by Rafael's story and the photo booths he's committed to preserving. Now, without further ado, please enjoy my interview with Rafael Hortala Vallve. So, Rafael, thank you for joining me on the podcast. Really cool to meet. You are the founder of AutoFoto, an analogue photo booth company. What was the inspiration behind starting a company to rescue and restore these relics of photography?
Yeah, I don't think that the intention was to create a company. It just happened slowly. So yeah, I think around 2009, a friend of mine was getting married and we discovered photography together. And I wanted to organize something special at his and her wedding. Both of them are good friends. And I thought of, having almost like, this idea of a photo call, something like this, where all of us could do something for them. And because we both discovered photography together, we went to the same high school and we enjoyed taking pictures together. I thought it has to be something to do with photography. And I used to take lots of pictures and I used to spend a lot of time in the darkroom. So it felt natural to just looking for a photo booth and trying to look for an original one. So one that would have a darkroom inside. And I started looking for them, like in Spain, in the UK. I live in the UK, I'm Spanish. So I looked at both places and also in Italy, and they had already thrown them in the bins. Basically, 2000.
Really?
Or 2009, they had gutted them. Like digital was the future. Analog was obsolete. And one can understand that. I remember talking to a photo booth technician from Montreal, and he was one day, I was having lots of trouble, and he was telling me, don't we all hate these machines? I was like, sorry, I don't. But I love them. But it's true that I suppose if you run a super big business like PhotoMe or AutoFoto Canada were doing, analog, it's a bit of a headache because it's all mechanical and things go wrong and they need maintenance twice a week. So I suppose digital was the future. So then I got myself one and I installed it in a venue here in London, place called Pizza East. It's part of Shoreditch House or Soho House. And I had the booth there. And then I learned how to make it work whilst it was on location, struggling a lot with the flashes, with alignment, but I only had one. And that was my little passion project on the side, or passion machine. And then maybe a couple of years later, I was like, maybe at some point, this old machine, something will go wrong and I will not have the part to keep it going. So maybe I should get a couple other machines and then say, I'll have three, and maybe at some point I could use one for spares, and I could come old and still have one machine. So I got a couple more, and I got a very good friend of mine who's a documentary photographer, David, involved in doing the weekly maintenance because I had my full-time job, so I couldn't really do it. Yeah, the rest is history. Then I started understanding very well how they work. At some point, I was in Chicago for my main job, which is I'm a political scientist, and there was this Midwest Political Science Association meetings in Chicago, and I met with Anthony from AA Studios, and basically he was moving workshops, and we filled up a 40-foot container full of rusty parts and old and harnesses, and really, yeah, one wouldn't think that after all the years of studies, all of a sudden, in my mid-30s, I would just get a big pile of junk. But of course, it wasn't junk. It was like then when I needed a little screw or a little part, I could just go and dismantle one of the old parts.
Yeah.
And then I could service the machines I had, and then slowly I kept growing, and now I have 15 photo booths in London.
Oh, wow. Are they hard to get?
They're impossible to get now.
Yeah.
Basically, the very first booth I bought in 2009, I bought for around $3,000. I know of people that got them for $200 because the operators wanted to get rid of. It was easier for someone to come and pick it up than to rent a skip and throw it in the skip.
Yeah.
I mean, currently I hear that there's Mike in LA. He's just sold a booth for $50,000.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So now they're collector's items.
A little bit, yeah, and now there's a big community. I think it's not that big, but there's a small community, but we're all connected precisely through social media, through Instagram. We all know a little bit where we are, and we are kind of geographically separated, but especially in the US, so all my booths come from the US or from Canada.
Okay.
My feeling is here in the UK or in Europe, when things get old, they're thrown away.
Oh, okay.
Maybe also in Australia, I don't know, but in the US, I feel that when things get old, they're left at the back of their warehouse because they have a lot of space.
Yeah.
And you can just store things in the back of their warehouse. Instead, here in London, I'm running on a 300 square foot studio, like 30 square meters. It's just tiny space. And in the US, people I know, they have much more space.
So why do you think it's important to keep them? Like, if digital's easier to maintain and to run, is it like old cars? Is that what it is? Like, there's just
I think there's a little bit of everything. I think, to me, these are kind of the cameras that were used in the 20th century by many artists. Was the machine that popularized photography to the masses. Basically, photography at the beginning of the 20th century was a very elitist thing. Of course, it was just and suddenly Anatol Josepho and other inventors, they created these photobooths, the Photomaton, and for 25 cents, people could get 4 portraits of themselves. So suddenly it popularized photography. So I think it's important to preserve that, but also, you have the surrealist, and there's a nice piece of work by Matisse where you see Buñuel, Dalí, all with closed eyes. That's using exactly the same technology of the photobooths I'm restoring today. Of course, Andy Warhol used the photobooths, but Rauschenberg, Francis Bacon took self-portraits in order as an exercise, so that he would see his own portrait when doing his triptychs. So it's been a tool for artists in the 20th century. It's been the final product, of course, for many artists. And for us, it was important to keep this alive and make them available also for people, not only for people to use on the streets, but also for artists to use. And we had a few collaborations where we find a way for different artists to use the booth.
Yeah. So for people that aren't familiar with the technology, what is the main difference between the booths that you're rescuing and the ones where you would go and get your passport photo taken now?
So of course, the passport pictures is just a camera connected to a computer, connected to a printer. That would be the booths, which are amazing because normally they have a SIM card, and some operators don't even visit them in months. Only the SIM tell them whether there's a problem or whether the paper is running out, and then that's when they visit them. Instead, our booth, so basically is a mechanized darkroom.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so there's a roll. So look here. That's what I'm doing. Okay, sorry. Now I know that you're not going to cut it, but that's the camera.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we're holding up a big clunky piece of equipment here on the screen.
Yeah, so that's the shutter. Anyway, sorry about that.
Wow, okay.
It's very useful on a podcast to show something on screen. So basically, these darkrooms, they're called deep and dunk photo booth because your image is exposed directly onto paper. There's there's 4 shots, all in a vertical strip. And once these 4 shots have been taken, the paper, which is 40 mil wide, it's cut, and then it's delivered into a carrier, and this carrier goes through all the different chemicals until it gets delivered. So it's
like
a
it
little
dips
bit
them in somehow.
exactly. Our booths are called dip and dunk also.
Wow.
Because it dips in the different chemicals. In fact, it's not the usual developer stop and fix because we're using negative paper, the normal paper you use in the lab. I can explain a little bit later with some differences, but it's that negative paper, and then we're reversing the image chemically. So we have developer, bleach, clear, and toner, and then waters in between. There's kind of 14 tanks. So there's 4 chemicals and waters in between to avoid contamination. These chemicals normally need to be all replaced once a month. So once a month, you need to empty everything, recycle the chemicals, rinse all the tanks, and remix new chemistry. And then, of course, because of all these moving parts and kind of the age of the booth, things keep on getting a little bit disadjusted. So we need to keep servicing the booth twice a week.
Is it hard to find people that know how to do it?
Basically, no one that services one of my booths had ever done it before.
Oh, wow, yeah. Because I was thinking before we got on the call, like a friend of mine, he used to work at an independent cinema like 20 years ago, and they had the old projector. So you had to thread the film up, where they're all digital now. But there was him and the guy that trained him, and that was it. No one else knew how to do it. So if someone else came in, they needed to be trained how to thread up the machine, because if they were at a megaplex, you just push the button and the movie started.
Exactly the same. It's exactly the same. So basically, I learned the hard way by trial and error, and I hated electricity. I liked physics when I was in high school. I hated electricity, never fully understood it, I'm sure. But then I messed things up quite a lot in the past. I just burned lots of things, but yeah, I suppose it's the best way to learn. And so that makes me also very forgiving when one of my technicians messes things up, because it's like, don't worry, I was there. I've been there. So a few months ago, we bought 12 photobooths from Texas, and we are restoring them in Barcelona at the moment. And with a friend of mine that we used to race motorbikes together, he designs motorbikes, and he's thinking he also loves photography, and he's now shifting into doing photo booth restoration full time. Now we have 5 photo booths in locations in Barcelona, but we are growing the team there. It's only been 1 year since we installed the first one. And the 2 technicians we have there, and even this friend of mine who's an engineer, who of course can understand things much faster than I can. But all these people have simply learned slowly. So they start, we mix the chemistry the first day, they see how we do it. Every week when you visit the booth, you need to top up waters because there's lots of evaporation, because the chemistry needs to be kept at between 32 and 39 degrees Celsius. So it's quite warm compared to lab photography, which is around 20
something, yeah.
So it's much warmer because, of course, in 4 minutes, you need to do everything. You need to develop, reverse, and fix the image. And so, yeah, the people that started, they just knew nothing. And slowly, I've been teaching them. They've been learning, of course, on their own. I mean, most of the people in the team in Barcelona or London, they're experts. They're really, and in some cases, they know more than me because they do that every week. And I only do when there's big repairs. Then I go into the booth. But otherwise, the daily maintenance, I try to not do ever.
Yeah. I was wondering as well, because I don't know how long ago it was, but when Polaroid went out of business and then people tried to resuscitate the film because they still wanted to use their cameras, and a lot of other, let's say, analog processes are becoming harder to get and films becoming more expensive. What's the case with these machines? Like getting the strips and all that kind of stuff? Like, who makes it still?
Okay, now I can talk for hours about that. But so basically, throughout the years, we've been struggling sometimes to find some even the initial problem is already that the machines are 110 volts. They come from the US. So lots of things we get here in the UK or in Spain, they're 220. So it's very, like at points, it's been very complicated. All the threads of course, here in the UK, we're metric, also in Spain. In the US, is this imperial threats. So it's UNF or UNC. And now I'm okay. Now I know where to source things, as every business is all about sourcing. But there's some parts which I'm sure were super standard, like the rollers that pull the paper. I'm sure because they were producing so many booths, I'm sure they were using standard parts at the time, which are no longer standard. So in the case of the rollers, we were all struggling, and we joined forces with people in Amsterdam, Photomaton Amsterdam, and we had a company in Italy that did a mold for us to make new rubber rollers.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking if you wanted to 3D print them or something, like make your own parts.
Yeah, and we are 3D printing some of the parts. This friend of mine, who's an engineer, we have a 3D printer back in Spain, and he's very able to do it. I'm not, but we are already 3D printing many parts. But the rollers themselves, because they're exposed to chemicals, and they need to be a little bit soft because it's an outside core of a core of brass and an outside kind of roller that is PVC, and it needs to do exactly the right the right softness of the roller.
Oh, okay, yeah.
A little bit like the rollers with the printers. When printers get old, that's where they fail. So that's exactly where we are. But then you were asking about the paper, and the paper is a bit of a long story. So I was telling you before that the paper we use is very similar to the darkroom paper, but say the multi-grade paper by Ilford that you can get and you use in the lab, in the darkroom, is between 3 and 5 ISO. The paper we used to have was 150 ISO. So
okay.
And I'm saying the paper we used to have because up until 3 years ago, there was only one producer in the world for photobooth paper. And that producer was a company called Slavic that is next to Moscow in Russia. So, of course, due to the Ukraine war, suddenly they got them out of the SWIFT system. So we couldn't get the money to the company, but we managed through different ways. In my case, there was a family friend whose dad fought in the Spanish Civil War, and there were the international brigades, and then end up having a friend, like a very good friend in Russia. So this friend of my family had an import-export business with Uzbekistan and Russia as well. And then through him, I was able to pay the Russian company. And then the Russian company was sending me the paper via Turkey because it was not illegal to receive goods from Russia, but they couldn't come directly to the UK. So we were coming through Serbia or through Turkey. Now, the problem is, as the war continued, now the Russian company couldn't import anymore the base paper on which you lay the emulsion, because there's only one company that does the base paper for photographic paper, which is DuPont in Germany.
Yeah.
DuPont is a big chemical company. So all of a sudden, we had no paper.
Oh, no.
And then we contacted Harman, which is the owner of Ilford, and Foma, and some other tiny producers. But so Foma were really fast, and they were able, because the problem is our paper. So basically, we have rolls that are 150 meters long or 200 meters long, 40 millimeters wide. And then you take a picture, which is, every picture is 5 centimeters tall, so it's 20 centimeters every strip. And then once the picture is taken, there's a guillotine that cuts the paper. And then you have your photo strip, but it's all in a roll. The problem is these rolls need to be 40 mil wide. And this is called slitting the paper. And this is a little bit of an art, and it's big machines, and they require really resetting. So Harman didn't have the capacity to change anything in their factory because they are overwhelmed, I think, with demand. Yeah. And so Foma was able to do it early on. The problem with the Foma paper is that it's 3.6 ISO. So it's 5 stops slower than the paper we got from Russia, which means we had to increase temperature, try to reduce the time in which we were developing the paper, add more developer, and sometimes even add extra flashes, which already people complain that the flashes in a photo booth, they're a bit blinding because you're in a dark environment, you have this big flash on you. So we started doing lots of tests with lots of different papers. In fact, I collaborated a lot with Matteo in Foto Automatica in Firenze, in Florence. And I started testing lots of papers. And in fact, during an international photo booth convention I organized in 2023. I presented what is now used by most photo booth operators, which is the gallery paper from Harman, which is a paper used in their machines when they develop kind of prints. It's a paper that is a bit faster than the multigrade, the Ilford multigrade. So rather than being between 3 and 5 ISO, it's between 6 and 10 ISO. So we're gaining one stop. And this is really helping us to just keep going. And now Harman is slitting the paper at 40 mils. So we're using that paper, and even though it's not as good as the Russian paper in terms of speed, we can keep going. So people complain also because this new paper has much less range of grace. It's much more contrasty, which then creates problems because of course the aperture in the lens, we cannot change the aperture in the lens. Our cameras are set at a certain aperture, and they don't change the aperture depending on the person that is sitting inside the booth, nor they change depending on whether the person is wearing whites or is wearing blacks, which of course has a massive effect in that tiny enclosed environment.
Yeah.
So the problem we're having is when we have people with darker skin or people with very white skin, they're not ideally exposed. So in the vacuum, we don't see much detail. In the very pale skin, it's almost too burnt. So this is a little bit the problem we have with the current papers. So we are still talking to small producers. One is in Germany, trying to develop a new emulsion that would be faster and would have bigger range of grace. So this is going back to what you were asking.
Yeah.
We need to reinvent the wheel. And it's a little bit like Polaroid and the Impossible Project. Like there was a technology out there available that maybe due to new environmental regulations, which rightly so are in place, or whatever reason, we need to reinvent the wheel a little bit. And we are there. Now we're trying to improve. Also, if you look at a photo booth from the 50s, it's going to say that the picture takes 2.5 minutes to develop, which means nowadays it takes 4 minutes. It means that the paper was very different, was much faster, maybe had much more silver, and we were able to develop the pictures much faster in the past than we can at the moment.
Yeah, it's amazing. You don't realize, I think, you just think, oh, it's a photo booth and it's doing its thing, but there's a lot going on behind the screen and everything inside the machinery. I guess you mentioned the 50s, and I suppose the reason that we're speaking is that 2025, this year, is the 100th anniversary of the photo booth. How have they changed over time, like from when they very first hit the streets until now?
So the technologies changed. So there was this Jewish-Russian immigrant to the US called Anatol Josepho, that we are kind of locating this 100th anniversary because between 25 and 26, but we believe it's 25, is when he opened the first shop with 6 photo booths, and there were thousands of people queuing up. It was just months after that some big US industrialist bought the patent from him for $1 million. But $1 million of 1925.
In 1925. That's incredible.
And then slowly they've been changing, but earlier on, say around the 40s, there was, in most photo booths, only one picture was being able to be developed at a time. This is within at least the AutoFoto company or the Photomi company, which are the same companies called differently in different areas of the world. This was the Model 9. And then the Model 11, which is a booth that has round edges, which is really beautiful, was the first one that then had the possibility of developing 7 pictures at the same time. So you didn't need to wait 4 minutes for the picture of the previous customer to come out. As soon as the flashes had gone off and the picture had been cut and had been started to be dipped to the chemicals, the next customer could already sit and take their own pictures. So basically, more or less, every minute and a half, people could take pictures. And that technology is then exactly the same to the technology you see in all analogue photo booths in the world at the moment.
Wow. And from what period was that one?
I think it's from the 50s, mid-50s. From the
50s. Did they change the exterior of the booth much? Like, did it kind of follow the different styles and designs of those periods?
A lot. In fact, if you go to my webpage, autofoto.org, and you go to find our booths, you can see lots of different designs, and all these different designs are original. Of course,
Yeah.
in some cases, I've changed the formica on the exterior and I've restored them, but I haven't changed them dramatically. And so they can be very, very different.
Yeah, nice.
What changed the most through time was the flashes.
Oh, yes. Okay.
The type of flashes, this is something that changed a lot. And it's something that we struggled a lot with troubleshooting in the past.
Oh, yeah, because just thinking about it now, are you still able to get incandescent or halogen bulbs, or are you using LEDs?
Yeah, so the kind of these xenon field tubes are still available, but exactly the ones with the base we need and with a trigger that transforms the voltage into kind of 1,000 volts in order to make the gas inside the bulb pop. These ones, we're struggling to find them, but we are collaborating with Robin, who's an amazing engineer, and he's like trying to use new xenon tubes and adapt them to our booths.
Wow.
But in a way, they're still modern flash units. This still exists, so we're just trying to see which bulb we can kind of retrofit into our machine.
Yeah. What do you have planned for the 100-year anniversary?
So we are planning with a filmmaker, friend of mine. We already kind of recorded a video, a little bit of a day in the life of AutoFoto. So we were looking at all the different aspects involved in having photo booths out there, which from preparing the chemicals. So we bought raw chemicals and we mix them in the right proportions. We pack them then of course we take them to locations, we mix them, all the alignment, and also the experience of people using the booth. So we'll have a little short film that hopefully we're going to launch in a month's time or so, most likely.
Oh, cool.
In one of the venues where we have a photo booth in Selfridges, in the department store. They have a cinema and we have a photo booth there. We will launch the video, the short film in there in a few weeks' time. We still don't know exactly when. And then other important things we are doing is we are inviting various artists and makers and designers to use the photo booth to create new work. And we're trying also to invite people that might not have worked with photo booths before.
So that's inviting them to London or to Barcelona?
Yeah, exactly. So people that live in the London area or the Barcelona area, and just give them free rein with using of our photo booths, whether it's in my studio or out there. We give them a card and encourage them to create some work, which of course is their work, but at least maybe at the end we're going to create some kind of publication or a little exhibition to do with this idea of in the 100th anniversary, let's invite current kind of makers or artists to use that as their camera of choice. And another thing we are doing, which in that case I'm not organizing myself, but through the years we organize these international photo booth conventions, which sounds very grandiose, but it's just a gathering of all the nerds that care about this. And so we organized one in London here in 2023, which was amazing because around 60 people came from Melbourne, Singapore, Korea, San Francisco, New York, Montreal, Poland, Amsterdam. So from all over the world, all the different operators.
Yeah.
I had only met face-to-face 3 or 4 of them. So now, this year for the 100th anniversary, we are going to have a convention in New York, which is a nice celebratory kind of event because that's where Anatol Josepho first installed his photo booth in 1925.
Yeah, and I guess there must be a big network of people in the US if they're manufactured there and most of them are available there if they're in people's warehouses and stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so there's quite a few people like a strong base. So Mike lives in LA and Max lives in New Jersey, and they used to work for PhotoMe, for the old operator, and now they have lots of photo booths. Maybe they have 40 or 50 photo booths in storage, but they don't even have the time to store them. And they have maybe as many in locations. There's Anthony up in Chicago. There's Photomatica in San Francisco. There's Brie, that is very interesting, Brianna Conley. She has a team of only women servicing photo booths.
Oh, sweet. That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice because as many things that had to do with mechanics in the past, they were mainly men involved in those tasks. So yeah, there's quite a few people up in the US doing really interesting things, and so hopefully there's going to be a lot of interest when we have the photo booth. And other things that are happening also this year. Naki Goranin, which is the author of American Photobooth, is collaborating with a filmmaker, with the granddaughter of Anatol Josepho, to do like a documentary, a historical documentary on photobooths. At the same time, also Reynald Pellicer, which is another author of The Photobooth, this other book that is a bit of a reference for photobooth lovers. So he's creating a new edition, and also with French TV, he's also going to create some kind of documentary to do with the history of the photobooth. There's also Max Fitzgerald, which is an artist based in Canada that is also creating some kind of film. This is more of a personal take on the photo. So there are quite a lot of things going on around the world. And here in London, we're going to have a few events that we're still planning, many of them, but one of them that we're going to collaborate with is in autumn. There's going to be a little show at the Photographers Gallery about
cool.
the history
Yes.
of the different photographers using photo booths. And we're going to bring a photo booth to the gallery.
Oh, nice. And so what sort of work would you be including in the exhibition?
I'm not the curator. Photographers
okay.
Gallery. Yeah, so so Photographers Gallery, they are organizing a show, and we're collaborating by bringing a photo booth, and if needed be, of course, by putting them in contact with different artists that we know are working still today with photo booths.
Because another event that I saw you had was with the Real Selfie Project at Spittlefields Market, London.
So the Real Selfie Project is a side project I have with a filmmaker. He's a documentary maker, so many years ago, we're good friends, and he was looking about the photo booths, and we started thinking maybe we should do something in order to use the photo booth to capture different kind of communities here in London. And with the excuse that it takes 4 minutes for the picture to be developed, there was that idea of let's use those 4 minutes to interview the sitters. And then we started locating one booth close to where the studio is, which is a very fashionable street called Broadway Market, which is a farmer's market here in London, in East London. And then we just took at this used unit and we put a photo booth there, and we had this big sign saying free selfies. So people could come into the photo booth, and then they would take 2 strips, one for them, one for us. And we were building kind of a gallery of portraits of the people that were in the market during those days. And then we were talking to them a little bit, and slowly this kept on evolving. And I have a photo booth at Coldrops Yard, which is a shopping area around King's Cross here in London. So just after the lockdown, we convinced the venue to let us open one of the photo booths, of course, disinfecting the booth between each use. And then we took the chance to interview people about lockdown and about what happened in the last few months. And we created a little publication and an exhibition mixing these portraits together with the text or the quotes from the people that were being pictured. A bit later, so we're going to end up later in Spittlefields, as you were asking me, but in between that happened in collaboration with Autograph Gallery here in London and Hackney Council. We took a booth to a Windrush party or a Windrush celebration. Windrush was that boat that brought people from the Caribbean into the UK just after World War II. There was this call from the UK, come to the mother country and help us rebuild the country. So lots of people came from the Caribbean. Of course, they weren't treated as it was announced, so there was a lot of racism, of course, against them. And these racism took kind of its extreme in the last 10 years when people that had been living here for 60, 70 years, suddenly they were not having the right to live in the UK because maybe they didn't have the right paperwork. In all these crazy discourses against immigration that are happening all over the world, there was a lot of red tape not allowing people getting their right to stay in the UK. And they were one of the cases that was really salient, and people going back to the Caribbean and then not even being able to come back to their homes because they didn't have the paperwork sorted. Now,
that's terrible.
Yeah. So we took one of our photo booths to one of these parties, and then we did the Real Selfie project. We was, okay, let's take portraits and let's capture their stories. It was quite fitting because they were taking pictures on the machine, really, that they would have taken their passport picture many years ago. But we were, of course, celebrating their stories on how they came to the UK. And once again, we did a little publication with those stories and the portraits of the Windrush elders. So now I installed a photo booth at Spittlefields Market in East London, next to Liverpool Street. And together with Old Spittlefields Market, the project we have is we're going to be talking to the traders. So we are going to take, of course, their portrait, capture their stories, and then we're going to blow up those portraits and those stories above the stalls hanging on the roof of Spittlefields. That's the project. And there's amazing stories, right, from people that have been trading old watches for the last 40 years to people that are maybe there's strong communities, maybe some Nepalese community, some Moroccan community that focus on particular goods that are sold in the market. So the idea is to give a bit of a voice to the stories behind the stall traders.
Yeah, cool. I really like I didn't expect this. I guess all the community engagement and the outreach and everything else, it's it's a lot more than just somewhere you go and have your photo taken. Like you're really accessing stories. And
to be honest, when I bought my first photo booth back in 2009, my idea, so I had been a few years in London and I loved all the different markets from the more renowned Camden and Portobello, but also Columbia Road, the Flower Market, and Petticoat Lane, Roman Road, like really the local markets that sell from brass and pants to pound a bowl of fruit for £1, and anything else that you can imagine in between. My project was to take the photo booth to all these different markets and capture the people that were going to those markets, but only with the mugshot, only with the face. And just through the years, bring the photo booth to all these different locations and be reporting or kind of accumulating portraits of the people that had been going to those places. It just happened that once I got the photo booth, I realized it wasn't so easy to move around. And then I was like, okay, that idea was put on hold. Until then, I started collaborating with Nick, and then we could just start bring the booth to different locations, not so much into markets, but at least to different communities in a bit more controlled way and capture their realities and their stories.
Yeah, no, it's really nice. Are you taking the photo booths to any photography festivals this year?
So we've been going to Photo London for the last few years, and we're going to bring it again to Photo London. In fact, I'm just restoring one that is all covered in stainless steel, and hopefully that one I'll launch. It's not launch because I'm not really making it new, but I'm restoring it fully. Yeah. Hopefully it's going to be ready for them. We were also talking to Paris Photo, and we would love to bring one to Arles in the Rencontre de la Photographie, but in the south of France, but we're still in talks to see how we do that.
Mm-hmm. I think you said you're in London and Barcelona. A few weeks ago, I spoke to Pablo Giori from the Experimental Photo Festival. Do you know him?
I don't know him, but definitely it's just, like you get so busy with your day-to-day that...
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a few festivals in the area around Barcelona about kind of experimental photography, but also classic photography, and I just need to engage with them. It's just I'm based in London, so when I'm back in Barcelona, it's always family and old friends, but I need to start to engage with people there.
Yeah, well, I interviewed him because they're having the International Photo Festivals Association meeting in Barcelona. So that's where they're bringing together lots of other photography festivals. So it could be a good place. It's at the start of July. It's a few days before Arles. So Arles starts on the 7th, and it's like 4 days before.
Okay, maybe you give me another idea of something else we could do for the 100th anniversary.
The other one I had on my list was the Love Booth LGBTQ+ Connections Through Photography collab. Yes. So what's that one?
So this is Karen Vost, is an artist that lives in Ramsgate. Ramsgate is at the end of Kent, after the Thames Estuary, really. She has this work, she does these big light boxes with old mugshots from famous people, when David Bowie or Marilyn Monroe were in kind of detained. She has been able to obtain their mugshots, and she's been putting them on on big light boxes. And so because she loves all to do with photo booths, she's organized this project during Pride at Ramsgate, inviting people to take portraits in a photo booth and engage with kind of the intimacy and the love aspect of being inside the booth. And so we're going to bring a photo booth over there. We might also bring a photo booth to Bristol, to the Par Foundation maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But we're just kind of starting to see, right now this belongs more to me being able to facilitate the booth for artists that want to engage with the medium. And this is really Karen's project. I'm just a collaborator at making sure that she has a booth that is working and she can realize the project with the original photo booth rather than a digital one.
Yeah, okay, cool. I guess if there's artists listening or people that have a festival or a gallery or a space where they would like to collaborate or to do something, where's the best way they can find out more?
So basically, they just need to reach out to me. So if they go onto our webpage, AutoFoto with F, AutoFoto.org, autofoto.org, in there, if they email info@ or any email they find there, it will end up on. We are just very it's me basically and my wife. So if they send us an email, we can talk about it. I mean, here in London, there was also a nice project that this artist that he mainly does screen printing. He's called Real Hackney Dave. Is his artist name, and we brought one of our booths to the Jealous Gallery during Valentine's a few years ago, and then people were doing the photo strip, and he was screen printing XOXO in pink, in deep pink on top of the photo strip. So that was kind of more of a funny kind of take on Valentine's. But in general, please get in touch. Also, if you're an artist that lives in London and want to do a project with a photo booth, you just need to reach out and I'll give you 50% discount on using my photo booth. We'll just
that's really generous.
I always do it. In fact, one of my main technicians, which is Marco Ferrari, he was an artist, or he is an artist that used photo booths. And it was because one day he was using the photo booth and we were servicing it. We ended up meeting him because, of course, what happens is like we don't even know the people that are using the booth for their artistic practice because, of course, they're unattended. It's not like we are by the photo booth all the time. So they might be using them and we have no idea. So I should reach out more to anyone using the booths that we could make it work and they'll get 50% discount on using them.
Oh, perfect. Awesome. Well, it was really cool to talk, Rafael, and to learn more about this. And I guess your passion for this is very infectious. So I have to keep an eye out for where there's an analog booth or find out how I can kind of get a hold of one.
You're based in Australia?
Currently, yes.
Is that Melbourne?
I'm in Perth.
In Perth. Okay. That's the other side. But in Melbourne, there's some friends of ours in Flinders Station. Is it called Flinders?
Oh, Flinders, yes.
Flinders, sorry, I never know how to pronounce the name. In Flinders Station, there's a photo booth there that used to be run by Alan, that he passed away sadly last December, but he was most likely the oldest photo booth operator that was still alive. And now Chris and Jess, they just took the relay from them and now they're just continuing and they're installing now photo booths all over Melbourne.
Wow, cool. That's really nice. Thanks, Rafael, for joining me on the podcast, and thank you for listening to this episode. I really have a new appreciation for photo booths and the work that goes into keeping these old analog machines running. In the show notes, you can find links to the AutoFoto website and social media presence. I've also listed a few of the activities they've planned for the 100-year anniversary of the first ever photo booth. Next week, we'll see the beginning of my collaboration with the Association of International Photography Art Dealers, better known as APAD. I've recorded episodes with past presidents, current management, and a range of gallery members in the organisation discussing how much the art market for photography has evolved since APAD was founded in 1979. We'll also focus on some niche areas including New York as an art market capital, female representation in photography, and how to start collecting. There are 8 episodes in total, which will be published twice weekly throughout April in the lead up to the photography show presented by APAD, which takes place from the 23rd until the 27th of April 2025 at the Park Avenue Armory in New York. If you don't want to miss out, please subscribe to Subtext and Discourse Art World Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And if you know someone else interested in the overlap of photography and the art world, please send them a link to the program. Podcasting is obviously a broadcast medium, however, I'm happy for listeners to reach out and start a dialogue. I'm not on Twitter much these days, though you're welcome to follow me on Threads, Instagram, Blue Sky, LinkedIn at Michael Dooney. Otherwise, you can also use the contact form on my website, www.michaeldooney.net. There you'll also find the International Photo Festival database I put together, as well as my webinar for photographers and artists working in lens-based media to better understand the art marketplace and get their work into galleries. I think that's everything. Thanks again for tuning in. My name's Michael Dooney, and you've been listening to Subtext and Discourse.